And we'll start, you can introduce yourself starting from Bella, please.
Hi, I'm Bella. I look after data partnerships across Australia and New Zealand at the Trade Desk. Happy to be here. Hi.
Lovely to have you.
Hello, I'm Rashida. I'm the Chief Digital and Technology Officer at Spark Foundry and the co-chair of the IAB Data Council. Lovely to be here.
And I'm Greg Carney, Executive Manager of Media at Suncorp Group. We have a group of insurance brands that you'll know, such as Amy, GIO, Shannon's, and others.
Fantastic. Another round of applause, people. Never know whether to have glasses on or off. It's all falling apart in my 50s. Anyway, look, I mean, some of the insights were quite sort of obvious, but it's important sometimes to dig into understanding why this is. So it's nice to see that data is important commercially for advertising. I mean, right, thank goodness for that. But in terms of changes from last year, we've noticed that the uses of transaction data has increased. There could be a number of drivers for that, but which do you think are particularly significant, Rashida?
I'm normalising having notes at these things because it's too early and I haven't had enough coffee. But when it comes to, I mean, data has been super important from a commercial perspective, and the increase in how important transaction data is, I think, comes down mostly just to accountability, right? So there hasn't been a single year post-COVID where any of my clients have had any other task than do more with less. And therefore, the accountability and the pressure that is on marketing teams to make every single dollar count, not just for optimization, but then reporting back to the CEO and the board, is just incredible. Now, the second thing that I think is important to acknowledge is that the boom in retail media over the last 18 months to 2 years have made more of that transactional data available to then feed into this kind of accountability piece. So those are two of the really big factors for me. Now, let me check my notes. The other thing is just that democratization of data collaboration. You can see in the reports just the familiarity that the market has built in using data clean rooms, privacy-enhancing technology, and with the retail data being more available to integrate into clean room and feedback into digital strategies, I think that has been a big factor as well. And the final piece is just that increase focus on first-party data strategies. And then how do we link that first-party data into transactional outcomes has also been a big focus for brands over the last 12 to 18 months, I think. Anything you wanted to add?
It's like we planned this.
Oh, like. Seamless.
I think the only thing that I would add to it is just, I think, picking up on the accountability piece, is that for years there's been this kind of mystique around third-party data, and I think that we've all in the room at some point kind of challenged and questioned just the sources of it and where it's going. But with retail data, you do have a fairly, good shot at it being loyalty data or deterministic data. It's first-party data that's being commercialised, so it's actually real people doing real things. And better yet, on the accountability piece is the measurement that we're offering. We're now seeing a lot more coming in. So retailers are actually, they're allowing us to measure the success of their own data, which is really powerful. And that's not something that we've had previously with third-party data. So I think it's that nice loop that we're creating.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, you can almost track it by the scale of growth of our particular working groups and councils. Like data, that was the one that grew fastest, and now retail media, and now potentially AI. Let's see what's next. But the other, staying with you, Bella, in terms of what we saw decline, I found it interesting that the usage of demographics declining, but also good old prior ad exposure.
Yeah, so prior ad exposure breaks my heart, because I remember early days in my media career, my whole sell was about the sequential messaging and how we could actually speak to the customer and have a two-way conversation. So to see that that is no longer important is fantastic for DCO vendors and the power of creative now. I think we've really moved on from the 1-2 messaging that sequential allowed. But that one, not so sad. Demographics is interesting. I think this one is a reflection, I think, of just how advanced our marketers are becoming and our brands are becoming. Maybe there's 1, if 2 brands in Australia that need to speak to every single person in an age bracket, but majority of brands are wasting so much cash doing that. And so to see a nice shift away in conjunction with the amount of signals that we're getting and first-party data use, and moving now to kind of more effective media buying with an actual intention of meeting a certain cohort because we can, doesn't surprise me. So I think demo will always have a place for our traditional medias. It's how you do TV buying, but TV planning. But with digital now, it really looks like the industry has shifted a lot more. And I think it's exciting.
It's interesting, isn't it?
I'd add to that, from a segmentation point of view, when brands are segmenting their audiences, you're rarely relying on demographics to do that. It's far more attitudinal. But the digital capabilities to target that way makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. It always felt so foundational, but maybe I'm incredibly old school. So, staying with you, Greg, around data-related capabilities, it was nice to see confidence in leveraging contextual, sort of a surprise. It's been around like 25 years. But there are some areas that were slightly worrying in relation to certainly skilled talent, which is a reason that we focus so much on that more recently, but also competently leveraging capabilities such as AI. What do you think about some of these insights and the advice you might give for businesses on those data points?
Thanks, Jojo. It was a cheeky 4 to 5 part question there.
That was, yeah.
To kick things
It
off
became a
on
soliloquy.
Wednesday
I should have had slides. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm going to try and, I'll start from the beginning. Yes, contextual seems to be back in fashion. That's good. Makes sense. And it's kind of the low-hanging fruit as well. But I think for us, and for all advertisers really, that environment is sort of the starting point. It's when you're leveraging your first-party capabilities, DCO, personalisation within those environments that's where the magic really starts to happen. I think for us, as a home and motor insurer, environments like REA and car sales, they're great environments, but as I say, when we're leveraging our personalisation programs in there and first-party data sharing and matching, that's when the magic happens. So
we've just got more competent at some of the traditional foundation, and we're layering on top a lot more capabilities to just make it properly work.
Yeah, 100%.
Right.
100%. Around, was it AI and skill force?
Yeah.
Well, the talent piece is interesting. I think, part of the research, I think, showed that there's still not a fear of the unknown, but, still some hesitancy around first-party data strategies at large. And I think, part of that, and it sort of links to the skills question, is that it's really hard. And I think in the room we spend a lot of time on the marketing side of things, where we're putting together our strategy around data, RFPing our partners across tech and agency, and getting all the sort of ducks in a row to put your program together. But then the real challenges hit internally. And I think, the landscape we're in at the moment is very risk adverse. There's so much governance around it. In our space, for context, we have a monthly sort of leadership team within the marketing meeting where we talk operations, and we used to have one risk member, an external risk team member there. Now we have 5 for every meeting. So, the focus on risk is exponential. And so when you're trying to implement big programs that are involving data, there's a lot of hesitancy internally. And additionally, there's a lack of the right skill sets within the broader organisation. So they've got their own their workflows and their program slate, and it's very hard for marketing to get on these program slates when there's so much other transformation happening within the business. So it's hard. There's a lot to it, and the marketing component is half of it. But then how you can get that through the business and get support and funding is a whole other challenge.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose on one level you want to be sort of free to run at things quickly in marketing. But that said, it's nice to see it actually centralised part of the overall discussion. It does actually touch everything. So in some ways it's just being a bit more grown up, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, the advice is around, get really good at business case writing. I think the ability to distill what you're trying to do into a single, one or a couple of pages and deliver that internally is sort of the trick, I think. Yeah.
Now, inevitably, we'll just touch very lightly on AI because we have an entire session on it to follow. But Rashida, there were some key insights in there. So we'll just quickly check on its increased importance for planning, the breadth of work that your agency does for your clients across strategy and optimization. But were there any specific concerns or highlights or other points that you felt that came out from the report that specific that we should consider or maybe work with the AI working group on?
I mean, we'll talk about AI quite a fair bit later, and I know Keelan is, can't wait. I think for me, what I saw in the report indicates that the market is very much in a testing phase from AI. We're still very much kind of test and learn, trialing things out, but nothing. There's a very small portion of people that go, oh, I've got this completely embedded in my workflow. I know when the AI comes in. I think there's a couple of reasons for that. I think the trust in the AI platform and the efficiency versus effectiveness is still a bit of a delta. So yes, you're going faster, but if you don't have trust in the outputs or the outcomes, then that's difficult because you kind of have to go back and check your outputs from an AI perspective. So there's still a lot of test and learn, and that's kind of consistent with the conversations I'm having with clients in markets. Everyone's really keen. I think it's not a lack of appetite to use AI more, but that trust and outputs is still missing. The comparison to the US, being the competitive guys that we are, it's always a little bit annoying when we feel like we're behind the US. I don't think anybody likes that feeling. So I've spent a little bit of time pondering why might that be. I don't have an answer. My speculation is that so much more of the media landscape is addressable in the US. So therefore, building a workflow, at least from a media buy-in, speaking as a media buyer, if I can build a workflow that captures 80 to 85% of my addressable campaign, that's really worthwhile, and you would invest a lot more of the time and effort to kind of get to that point. In Australia, we're still looking at 60 to 65%, so therefore it's a bit more kind of segregated and very sort of digital team specific. So I'm hoping that, because the addressability in this market is moving very fast, I'm hoping we'll catch up to the US and do it better.
Interesting. That's a good insight. Some of the research when looking at the ad tech and ops, it actually showed that a lot of the actual hands-on work is happening in more junior roles, and senior management aren't actually utilising it. They're sort of delegating it out, which is a big miss. Whereas some other markets, it's happening higher up the chain. Whether that's delegated or it's an emotional thing, I don't know. Bella, so there's a bit of a dichotomy here on one of the points which you actually pulled out quite brilliantly in terms of the adoption of certain capabilities, IDs, contextual, clean rooms, etc. We see an increased uptake, but alongside that, rather oddly, is, say, a lack of confidence in leveraging solutions such as IDs. What's going on there?
Yeah, well, after our chat about that, where I brilliantly brought it up.
You did.
You. That was my ego stroke for the day.
Genius.
No, I went on a bit of a down spiral with some of the guys at the trade desk about it, because it's just so interesting. Like, we have for maybe 18 months now spoken to the market about how powerful, actually even longer, about how powerful first-party data is. And obviously there are, like, the data shows that there is trust there, which is fantastic. But where is the data then being used? It sounds possibly like it's going kind of more the social routes, which is great, a great testing environment. For a lot of brands, though, a lot of their customers are kind of in this open web environment, kind of the streamers and the audio, and it's in those environments you kind of need to leverage ID solutions. And so in my kind of down spiral on this, it was like, what's going on? What have we done wrong? Maybe there's an education miss here around ID solutions. Is there still a big test and learn framework happening for many brands? And now, especially with the cookie deprecation not happening, I think that urgency we were once facing is obviously deteriorating or changing. And so the narrative that we're starting to, I think, bring to market a bit more with some brands, not everyone, is about having a toolbox of options. So not every ID is created the same. I think IAB identified about 10 in market at the moment, and they all have different needs. But what they do achieve in most situations is either creating that link between your first-party data customer and the open web environment. Like, we need to create that tactically, that kind of the biddable piece. So they achieve that. But also for others who don't have first-party data, there's ID solutions out there that can kind of create some, some magic for you, leveraging what you do have. So there is a lot of value still in these solutions, and I think what this sort of showing us is that there is trust in first-party data. Fab, you are using it, great. Let's continue to bring it over to all of your channels so you can really drive that effectiveness, drive that measurement, drive that story. And then with the rise of contextual in that scenario is really interesting because, again, that's quite a privacy-safe environment. That's sort of an ID-free environment. So I think there's a very clear causal link between sort of the rise of one and the sort of bobbing of the other. But then throw into the mix the rise and dependence on clean rooms. Again, I'm like, what is going on? Because that demonstrates that a lot of brands want to do more with their first-party data and they want to leverage more. So then, again, what happened with the ID piece? Now, I think there's just so much more that we can do here. I think it's a really interesting point for brands to take home. Can we test more? What learnings do you have where you are using first-party data? How can we bring it across? Work with your agencies, work with your tech vendors to really push that muscle and stretch it, because I think there's still a lot to give.
Yeah, there's a bit of work for us to do as a council on that one.
I went real down spirally on that, sorry.
No, it's fine, it's good. I think that's, therein lies the opportunity for us to help and support, right? So, because I know you had some important key points on that, Greg. So any additional thoughts in and around that?
I totally agree. I think there's definitely an education piece to it. I think probably most brands are using or have used some sort of ID solution, probably in a walled garden environment, but the open web, maybe less so. And I think there's probably, a lack of understanding. Yeah.
And maybe bad exampple, or they've tried and tested and it hasn't worked, was also what I was thinking after our chat.
Yeah, potentially. I think for us, we're sort of playing a bit of catch up in the open web space with IDs. But signal loss is here, so we need to work it out. And there are some really compelling opportunities in market. So I think, definitely an education piece. And also, it sort of does change your workflows a little bit, from a planning and buying perspective. If you want to go and try out some, omni-channel planning solutions, it's a fair bit of effort to go and set those tests up. It's not like, even like an ID solution within a walled environment. So there's a fair bit of work to get it going. And I don't know, too many people that are having spare time off the side of their desk. So to prioritise it as a test, again, just getting into that prioritisation piece, it can be a challenge, but one that needs to be addressed for sure.
It's such good feedback though, and it's something probably that, especially coming from a tech kind of position, we're so focused on, why aren't you doing it? It's so good, just bloody do it. But you're right, it's managing that expectation with your vendors as well to go, look, that's not on our roadmap now. It could be, what can we do in terms of bite-sized pieces to get there? Maybe there is something that we could automate. So it's just, I think it's such a big opportunity, and hearing that it's a time suck as well should create better opportunities on our side, an agency to try and assist, I think.
But I think it does come back to the education piece, because one of the reasons it's hard to prioritize is because the education piece is not there in terms of what the opportunity looks like. So if there are myths in market around the fact that, ID solutions are not privacy safe, or there's no longevity in them, or some of the kind of myths that still need busting, then it's hard to get on the top priority if you don't think that it has that value. So I think the education piece around what's the value, what's the opportunity, and how do you go about it efficiently from a test and then a scale perspective is going to be helpful in building those business cases as well, I think.
Now, look, we're so chatty as a group. I was going to ask questions about, and I can't believe the word tranche. I haven't used the word tranche so much in the last 6 months. But I think we'll leave that to Peter and Sarah's group to chew through. So to bring this to an end, I just want to have each of you just give us, what's one takeaway from either this session or just today that you hope attendees will retain? I can't remember what they say in events. You remember 2 things or something. So let's make it one of these. Can I start with you, Greg, and then we'll go across, and this will bring us home.
Yeah, I would say, if there's brands in the room, it's just about having those watertight business cases, identify an opportunity, start small, prove out the worth in that manner. So, start small, but make sure you're trying, because it's never going to be straightforward. It's certainly not a linear journey, and there'll be plenty of dead ends along the way. So just keep going and start small.
You know what, on that, there's almost a form of change management that takes place when you're bringing these changes in. And we do things so quickly in particularly digital marketing that you sometimes forget across organisations that speed of change is quite confronting. So that internal evangelisation, that's something that just has to be relentless and an ongoing,
100%.
Can be exhausting, but it's so important.
Yeah, and
across all the departments.
Lining up your internal stakeholders that you know matter and taking them on the journey. So you don't rock up with, hey, I need a couple $1 million for this. You take them on the journey so they feel part. Like I know it's almost cliched, so sorry, but it's just those basic stakeholder mapping and engagement principles that are just more important than ever. And
so
obviously
important.
communication.
It's often storytelling. I was never more proud than when I saw the finance department and lawyers talking about DNPs, how awesome they were. I was like, job done, let's go. Sorry, Rashida.
I think my one takeaway, both from the survey and the conversations we've had about it, is that change is hard. It's okay to ask for help. I think as digital experts, especially when you're the one digital or the one person in charge of media in an organization, there's the weight that you should have all of the answers for these things. We're at a pace of change that's so rapid. Nobody has all the answers. It's okay to ask for help, ask your agencies. Even if they're not your agencies and you want to grab a coffee with someone of the IAB Data Council or someone from the IAB, just holler, ask for a coffee, have a chat. Nobody has all of it figured out. Everybody's still working through this.
I love that answer. It's just a good human, people-based one. I'm often surprised people don't leverage good old vendors, agencies obviously.
100%.
But vendors love to help, or the good ones do. And that's often my first bit of advice when working or selecting a vendor. Like, just get in there and let them consult with you, because that's what they're mostly built for. And as is the IAB, the level of knowledge, I'd like to think, and experience, otherwise known as wisdom, that you have in terms of research or product or reg affairs, etc. We're often surprised a number of times that we're not hit up often. Bella.
I think you stole mine, so I'm going to pivot. No, that's good. Means we're aligned. It's actually maybe a segue to the privacy piece that's coming, but I just think it was a little bit nerve-wracking to see that not everyone's feeling confident about what's coming with the Privacy Act. Like, things are coming, changes are coming, and I think in readiness for that, picking up on your point as well, Greg, is just start to think about the downstream impact of that. Like, maybe you guys looking after brand or marketing or CRM, but are your counterparts, are your peers aware? Like, are we ready for when this comes? What's customer messaging going to look like? Who from legal needs to approve that? So just kind of starting to think the downstream impact for your company with a privacy change. Who's going to be impacted first? What does it look like? Just starting to at least get those ducks in a row, because I don't know if it's going to drop tomorrow. Sarah knows probably more than us, but it could. And so I think just starting to get stuff in a row ready to go.
Great advice. And that, there are bits out that people still not having a great deal of confidence with that they need to support, let alone the known unknowns to come. So let's just deal with what we at least know. Great advice. Can we please give this wonderful panel a big round of applause? Thank you.